This past weekend, we had the Toronto Regional Championship, and kind of the surprise deck for the weekend was a couple different testing groups seemed to work together a little bit and bring this slow version of Gardy with no rare candies, and they also added in the Mawile. I'm going to very briefly go over the deck list, then we're going to play a couple games, and at the end I'm going to give my thoughts on where Gardy's at in the format right now and what I think is the best way to play Gardevoir. We have the Mawile that says during the next turn your opponent's active can't retreat, and it also takes 90 more damage next turn. So I think the 90 more damage part of the text is a little more interesting. It can let the Gardy EX do 280 damage, so we can just like stick a Regidrago in the active that just use Kyurem and hope that they can't retreat it, and then next turn knock it out with the Gardevoir EX. Or if we fall too far behind in certain games, we can maybe bring up like a Squawkabilly or something like that and stick it in the active until our opponent decks out. Other than that, it's like a pretty normal Gardevoir deck. Of course, we got our Gardevoir EX that accelerates energy from the discard pile and damages our Pokemon, and then we have our two attackers, the Drifloon and the Screamtail, that do more damage based on how many damage counters they have on them. Drifloon's our big one hitter. For 2 Psychic, it does 30 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, so we throw a Bravery Charm on that, and we can do up to like 330 damage, but more often we're just going to be doing 300 with it. Screamtail has a similar attack for Psychic Colorless. It does 20 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, but we can put the damage anywhere. So this is pretty perfect for sniping stuff like Squawkabilly or just setting up damage for later. It also has the 2 Munkidori, and I'm playing 2 Dark Energy. They were all playing 3. But Munkidori, of course, if we have a Dark Energy attached to it, we can move 30 damage from one of our Pokemon to one of our opponent's Pokemon. So this combines great with Gardy EX's ability. I ended up with just 2 because I kind of combined Henry Chow's list with Michael Davison's list and all them. Henry Chow didn't have the Fezandipiti, but he had the 2 Stretcher and the 1 Super Rod. And I don't know, I tried playing it without the Fezandipiti. I found a lot of decks were targeting down my Kirlias, and then it made it impossible to do anything once the Kirlias were taken out. So I added back in the Fezandipiti, but also wanted to keep the 2 Stretcher and 1 Super Rod. I definitely liked that combination. It's also back to the Unfair Stamp build that says, of course, one of our Pokemon were knocked out, both players shuffle their hand into their deck. We draw 5, our opponent draws 2. This is a great turn 2 option, and we're using TM Evo as our main way to get our evolutions into play. I think you're supposed to still go first with this deck, but I was choosing second and just trying to hit the Arven for like Poffin and TM Evo to TM Evo into 2 Kirlia. I think the idea of going first is you can retreat into your Klefki, slow the game down, and then next turn TM Evo with the Klefki in the active. We also have a Pal Pad back in the deck. I'm not really too sure if there was a specific reason or they just wanted access to the second boss, the second Turo, and maybe some extra Ionos at the end of the game. And it kind of combines better with the Unfair Stamp. So with Unfair Stamp, it's an extra consistency card, so we can get away with just 3 Iono and then use the 4th Iono slot to run a Pal Pad to get access to a second Turo or a second boss throughout the game. But yeah, that is the list, and let's get into the games. Alright, so this game we are up against Ceruledge. This should be a pretty decent matchup for Gardy, I would imagine, as long as either they don't play the Palkia Greninja water energy package, or we're able to get Manaphy down and they don't play like Canceling Clone or something like that. So definitely feeling pretty good about this one. I was playing against like a lot of random decks with the Gardy for some reason, like quite a few Ceruledges, a few Arcalodons, and more than one Palafin, which kind of surprised me. And those are all pretty solid matchups for Gardy, as long as like you're able to get rid of their big threat like Arcalodon, as long as you don't let them get into a big Dialga V-Star attack, and the same with Palafin and Ceruledge, as long as you can get rid of the Palkia before they can Greninja you to death. The other thing that is a little worrying with Ceruledge is if they play Briar and they're able to get into it. But yeah, so this turn was pretty straightforward. I went second, Arven for Poffin and TM Evo, and I chose to get the Drifloon with the Poffin because that's going to be like a good attacker in this matchup. It will probably end up being either my next attacker or the one after that if things go according to plan. And with like hands, I just like thinning the deck a little bit extra. That is something that you kind of have to be careful about with the slower Gardy, is taking up too much bench space because we definitely want to get down Munkidoris in most matchups. And I also didn't evolve the memory skip Ralts because that could be a useful attack in like a panic situation. But yeah, I top decked the Arven. I'm probably either going to go for Iono or Arven for Unfair Stamp. I probably talked about this before in the past, but decks like this that go through their decks really quickly, I like to Unfair Stamp them sooner rather than later. And it does not look like the Unfair Stamp is in the deck, so that's a little unfortunate. I'm just kind of poffining here to, you know, look at the deck, check prizes and stuff. So yeah, looks like there's going to be no Unfair Stamp, so Iono is going to be the way to go. Checking prize cards with Gardy is definitely pretty important. But yeah, I get into a pretty solid hand here with Artazon and a couple Psychic Energies, so now I'm basically guaranteed to be able to Scream Tail the Squawkabilly, which lets me put down the Fezandipiti without too much worry, even though I did hesitate a little bit there. But once we can go ahead in the prize trade like this, you're usually good to put down the Fezandipiti. They took one prize, I'm going to be able to take two this turn with Scream Tail. I Ultra Ball for another Kirlia here. I would rather get into a Bravery Charm and knock out this Ceruledge is kind of what I'm thinking, and use the Scream Tail knockout for something a little easier later. But it looks like the Scream Tail knockout is going to be what we have to go with. Now this matchup, I definitely like to, in an ideal world, be able to target down their any kind of draw engine they have in play. Like if they had a Fezandipiti down, I would try and prioritize knocking that out first, because we're really going to be trying to disrupt their hand as much as possible and kind of hope that they whiff Briar on the turn that they need to get it. I do end up, I think, forgetting about it later in the game, which is always annoying when I'm like thinking about something throughout the game and then just kind of brain fart on it on the last turn. But you know, should probably start playing these games a little bit earlier. I end up playing them like super late before I have to go to bed. I don't know, for some reason I always like want to play Pokemon later at night, and during the day don't really feel like playing as much. But yeah, just Scream Tail the bench guy, end up getting the Unfair Stamp, so that's pretty good. And now we're ahead on the prize trade. They do bench the Palkia. I wonder if that is, if they got it. No, they wouldn't have gotten out of their prizes. That wouldn't make sense. Kind of weird that they didn't go for that on the turn before. So I figured that it was prized because I thought they would prioritize it. So I didn't even leave a spot for Manaphy, even though I would assume that they're going to knock out my Fezandipiti. Or knock out at least one of my Pokemon. This can also be something annoying that happens when you're playing Gardy. If you set up a threat like this Scream Tail, which is another reason I was trying to get into the Drifloon. If you set up something that can't knock out their active, they're like incentivized to ignore it, because now my energy are all stuck on one Pokemon. So what I have to do is this turn Artazon for a Munkidori. I could get Manaphy and play it safe, but I don't know. I think that there's pretty good odds that off of my two trades and whatever supporter I get into, that I can get into either Boss or Arven or Counter Catcher and bring up this Palkia and knock it out with my Gardy X. I think have to get into one more energy card, which is a little unfortunate, but I don't know. Sometimes you just gotta go for it. Maybe there was just a better play there. Or actually, no, I don't think there was actually a better play there, because all my energy are stuck on the Scream Tail. I have no way to take two prizes other than this, and I need to kind of get into this play and hope that, one, they don't get Briar. That's kind of why I hesitated there for a second, so maybe I did remember it. But yeah, I can't knock them out with the Drifloon. I'd be 10 damage short. Yeah, because I'd only be able to do 210. So I kind of have to do this play, and next turn try and get into a Turo or a bunch of extra energy to be able to either Turo up my Scream Tail, get access to the energy, or hope that I get enough energy in the discard pile to still use Drifloon for the I think I would need, what, 4 energy, because 80 would be 240, and then Scream Tail or Munkidori damage. Yeah, so I need to get at least 4 energy in the discard pile, which I think should not be the biggest problem in the world, especially if as long as they knock out my Guard EX, should be good to go. They do retreat their other guy, to get enough energy, and they put a jamming tower in play, which is kind of funny because I got rid of the Artazon and I was thinking, oh, what if they play jamming tower? And then in my head I was kind of like, there's no way they actually play jamming tower in this deck. That seems so unlikely. But apparently they do. Jamming tower is kind of in everything right now, it would seem. But they did bench the Fezandipiti, so can boss that up and move 30 damage over with the Munkidori and knock it out with Guard EX. If they were able to get all this without benching the Fezandipiti, I'm pretty sure that there was no way to win this game. So my opponent almost got there, but we do end up taking that one. Definitely have to be more conscious of jamming tower. All right, so this game we are up against a Palafin deck. Now I had a few different games to choose from, and I ended up going with this one just because I think that this match kind of showcases like the negative side of Guardy. It can be a really clunky deck at times, and that can be pretty frustrating, but it does have a lot of comeback potential. And this also, I don't know, this game is kind of a mess, but it's a really close game, and I don't know, I thought it was a good one. Like here I used both my vessels because my hand is completely dead. I went second, I have no TM Evo, no follow-up in my hand, so I just burned both vessels to pull as many energy out of my deck as possible to increase the odds that I top deck. But the cost of that is now there's no way to search energy out of my deck. I have to raw draw into them, and I did prize too. So there's definitely some downsides to that choice, and they do end up Ionoing me anyway, but I didn't really think that that was something worth planning on happening. Also, I don't know what's going on with Palafin, but I've been running into it more than I would think. Definitely only a couple times, but I don't know if it's just the way that they changed the way the ladder works, and maybe they changed up matchmaking, but I was never running into Palafin on the ranked ladder. I don't know, hopefully it's better than it was. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I benched the Fezandipiti and draw. I don't know, I just wanted to draw more cards and see what I get into. I was hoping to get into a Psychic Energy just so that I could just use TM Evo. I don't end up getting into it. It's going to be kind of a pain to find. It is on the bottom of my deck, and I could have used the Nest Ball to shuffle my deck, but Nest Balls in this deck can be like really valuable, and I wanted to save it as this is, I think I was only playing one Nest Ball. I don't know, I really can't remember. I think I was going with the one Nest Ball in Double Stadium just because of the amount of jamming tower that I've been running into, like even in real life, has been I don't know, a little concerning. So I wanted the access to 2 Stadium, but I do get the TM Evo off this turn, so hopefully I will have access to at least 2 Kirlias next turn to draw some cards. My opponent burns a switch into Tatsugiri, so I'm guessing their hand was a little bit not ideal, or they're looking for a boss's order. They don't take anything off it, which is a bit interesting, but they did also fill their bench, which is pretty nice. I don't think they really needed to bench that many Denizens, because if they play Iron Bundle, that would be like a pretty big threat with my board like this to either be forced to send up a Kirlia or my Fezandipiti. I would obviously send up a Kirlia, probably the Kirlia that evolved from the Memory Skip Ralts, because they're not spreading damage counters like that, and Memory Skip would be the attack that I would most likely want access to later in the game. Alright, so I top deck a TM Evo, use the Fezandipiti first, of course trying to draw into energies to trade away. We do end up getting into a couple energy. I can PAF in there for the Drifloon. No, I don't get Manaphy. I don't know, maybe I should have. Kind of looking at this board, I'm kind of running off the assumption that their Greninja is prized. So I'm just saying like, oh, you won't be able to get Greninja, and I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna knock out this Palkia this turn, so there really is no threat of it. In my head, I don't know, it's gonna be a little bit harder than it seems. Like, it should be a simple knockout, but getting access to the energy is gonna prove to be tricky because the vessels are gone and 2 of them are prize. I benched the Screamtail as backup because I can Screamtail the Palafin if I don't get into a way to get more energy down, and that is what I'm going to end up doing. So hopefully they won't be able to get into a whole Greninja play this turn. It's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'm getting rid of their only attacker, and I think that only puts 1 water energy in their discard pile. So coming from a 2-card hand, they would need quite a bit to get a Greninja play off. Yeah, I'm just trying to justify not putting Manaphy down as much as possible, but I don't really know that I had the bench space for it anyway. I want that Drifloon with the charm for later in the game, and then at some point I'm probably going to want to get a Munkidori on the bench, and bench space and Guardy can just be really tight, and having a Manaphy on the bench when if you don't end up needing it can be like pretty punishing. And it looks like my opponent is going to end up using the Star Portal for just 1 energy, so now I never have to worry about getting Moonlight Shuriken with Greninja. My choice ends up paying off, which might be a little lucky. I think it was a bit of a calculated risk. I send up the Drifloon here. I'm debating sending up the Gardevoir or a Kirlia, not because I need the damage for like Munkidori as much, but if I draw into the Psychic that I need, I might want to retreat it off of attach it to the active and retreat so I can get 5 Psychic into the discard pile. But I have Ultra Ball and stuff in the deck, and I knew I had my Nest Ball, so if I really needed to get Greninja, I could like Nest Ball for Greninja and get rid of the Psychic, or just Ultra Ball the Psychic away. And I do end up just completely whiffing on the Psychic energy, so now I'm gonna have to go with, I don't know, it might be almost the better play, but it seems kind of somewhat suboptimal, definitely feels bad, of moving the 30 damage off of my Guardy EX onto the Palkia, putting 4 energy onto my Drifloon, and then trying to knock it out next turn. So my plan is, if they take, whether they take 1 or 2 prizes this turn, I'm going to knock out their Palkia with the Munkidori and try and knock out this Fezandipiti, or not Fezandipiti, this Tatsugiri. Whether it's on the bench and I try to knock it out with Screamtail, or I counter catcher it into the active. That's kind of my plan. And if they are able to attack with a Palafin, I would try and snipe it with Screamtail. But if they just attack with this Palkia and get no Palafin into play, I'm fine with just like a counter catcher or bossing up the Tatsugiri and knocking it out. And that is what ends up happening. It's almost better that they knocked out my Fezandipiti, because now I can Iono them to 1. I can Pal Pad back into Iono and hopefully trade into him, but of course I messed that up and trade first. I was still kind of in the mindset of I want to find that other Psychic energy, and I didn't want to shuffle it back into the deck from the Iono, but really I should have just Pal Padded the 2 Iono in first, because that is the main thing that I want to draw, even though their hand might already be dead, so it might not be that big of a deal. But I do end up hitting it off of the 1 trade. I'm just debating here using Greninja to get this energy into the discard pile while I have a chance, and it looks like I am going to do that. Kind of makes sense. I want to be able to retreat anything if off the Iono to 1, their top deck, they draw into like a boss and try and stall something. I want to have an energy, a Psychic in the discard pile. So I do Iono them, and because I can accelerate with the Guardy, the 1 Psychic, and then attach an energy that I get out of my prizes to the Pokemon to retreat, because I'm guaranteed to get at least 1 energy out of the prizes, and probably 2. I do end up only getting 1, so my last 2 prizes are double Psychic energy, which is kind of unfortunate, but I do have a play to win the game next turn, if I can Turo up this Drifloon and bench another Munkidori, I can knock out, I can use the 2 Munkidoris to knock out this Fezandipiti in the active, and then knock out whatever they send up with my Gardevoir. They do just end up passing. So now I'm going to Ultra Ball here for the Manaphy to thin my deck out. I have almost guaranteed odds of hitting the Turo. It would need to be the last card in my deck. And here I'm trying to figure out if I super odd back in the Munkidori and a Psychic Energy right now, if that would increase my odds of hitting the Turo, because I would have 2 outs in my deck to draw the other 2 cards instead of just the 1. But I don't end up doing that. I didn't want to think about it for too long. That is something that I'm constantly working on for the longest time now, is trying to play a little bit faster. And I do end up hitting the combo. Now they concede, but I could have just used both Munkidoris to put 60 damage on the active Fezandipiti. It would knock it out. Whatever they send up gets knocked out by the Gardevoir, so it would be fine. I tried not to overthink that super odd play. I want to play a little bit faster, especially with decks like Gardy. There's so many decisions and there's just so many choices that I could sit there and think like every decision through for 2 minutes if I wanted to. But yeah, after thinking about it a little bit longer, I think if I super odd it back in the Munkidori and the Psychic, Ultra Balled for the Munkidori, and then just had Psychic and Turo as outs to win the game in my deck, I would have had slightly better odds to draw it, because I had 1 out of 3 outs before, and then I would have had 2 out of 4. I don't know, it's pretty similar. I played games of this deck for like a full extra day trying to get a game where I used Mawile to show the situations it could be good in, but it really just never came up. Maybe I just wasn't playing against the right matchups, or maybe I wasn't having the right mindset with the deck, but it seemed like a lot of the decks that I was playing games against, either I didn't need to use the Mawile and there's no point in using it if you're going to win anyway, or it was a deck with a lot of switching options and like jet energies and stuff like that, and it just didn't really seem completely needed. But that was just my experience personally. I also didn't play against any Regidrago, and if it does help that matchup a good amount, it's definitely worth playing. That matchup is really hard, and especially with the slow version, it's really hard. My kind of thought process after all the games that I played with this is I like the faster version a little bit better. Maybe I wasn't playing it right. Maybe I should have been a little more slow. I think with the double Munkidori, often you want to like unfair stamp and get around Fez by not taking a knockout, and instead counter catch or something up and set it up to be knocked out with your Munkidoris again next turn, and hope that they can't get out of the active maybe, or that if they do, they're just taking a single prize, so it's not really a big deal. Maybe that's a little something to think about, but I always preferred to play Gardy a little bit more faster and aggressive. If you're gonna play this slower version of Gardy, I would definitely want to get a lot of games in with it if I'm gonna like bring it to, you know, a regional or a cup or anything like that. Like obviously a regional, but like even like a league cup, I would want to put in a fair amount of games with it if I really wanted to win the cup. It's a lot harder to play when it's slower like this, and there's different lines that I think you have to see. But yeah, that is Gardevoir again. Like or dislike, comment, subscribe, take care, and have a good one.